Hello, my lovely little daffodils. Today we're going to be redesigning some of my OCs. Only it's 10-ish months later instead of 10 years later. Right, but I swear to you that these designs are final. Now, today we're going to be looking at Astor, Dylan, and Cyprus Stavros, aka the reincarnations of Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades. So, without further ado, let's get right on to drawing. I would say that out of all of my characters, Astor is one of the ones that has changed the least design-wise. When you look at an older design of him from about 10 months ago, really the only things that have changed is that his flannel is closed, his hair is a little longer, and I also removed white from his color palette. Speaking of color palettes, in the beginning, every main character has their own specific colors associated with them. These color palettes are usually slightly changed towards the end of the journey. So in Astor's case, his beginning colors are blue, yellow, and brown. However, towards the end of the journey, purple is later added to the mix, which is to show his connection to Terra, aka the reincarnation of Hera. Speaking of these designs, I wanted these designs on the left side to be a little more based on outfits from their cultures. So in Astor, Dylan, and Cyprus's case, their outfits towards the end are more inspired by Greece, mostly ancient Greece, while, say, for example, Terra, her outfits are more inspired by traditional Indian clothing. But we'll talk more about all of that with Terra, Irit, and Orin in the next video. So yeah, I think there's not a lot that changed about Astor. He was kept pretty much the same, especially personality-wise. I think one pretty major thing that I added about him is that, first of all, his best friend would be Sage, aka the human disguise for Athena, since Athena, Ares, and Hermes are pretty much keeping tabs on all 5 of them, minus Orin, but we'll get to him later. Athena would more specifically be keeping an eye on the Stavros brothers, specifically Astor, since that's, Zeus and all of that. But I would like to think throughout the journey, sometimes when Athena tells him to do things, he kind of disobeys her, kind of more of a defiant streak, if you will. So yeah, I also added that he does really like art and was actually going to college for that before everything happened, and then, stuff went down, so I guess that had to wait, So yeah, not a lot has changed about Astor, but really, he's pretty much been all set since the beginning. Like, I've been pretty satisfied with how he is as a character, so there wasn't really a lot to change, One other thing, obviously you might have noticed that I did change how the character reference is going to be, so I color picked all the colors and they're off to the side, but there's also going to be 2 full body designs, one of the character in the beginning and one of the character at the end, pretty much. And then maybe more towards the bottom center-ish, I'm going to have their main weapon of choice. So in Astor's case, his weapon of choice is still going to be the lightning and all of that, his powers and all of that. So, but we'll get more into the weapons once we head on over to Dylan. With all that out of the way, I'll let the rest of this speed paint run through. Dylan is another character where I was pretty satisfied with his design at the beginning of the adventure, but I pretty much did a major overhaul with his design of him at the end. So I added a bunch more colors to him since his design before was mostly just like the teals and the sea greens and all of that. I decided to make it a little more interesting to kind of add more oceany colors and all of that. So of course we kept the sea green and all of that, but I also added some gold, a little bit of like a cream color, and some coral, just to kind of make things a little bit more interesting. And then I also added on the beginning design of him just some pinks and blues and yellows to his shirt, so that it wasn't just the tealish cyan-y color, you know? So yeah, now that that's out of the way, I do want to talk about his weapon of choice. I decided, since, Dylan and like all the other characters is the reincarnation of a god, I wanted his weapon of choice to be a little bit different. Instead of having it be the trident, like Poseidon's weapon of choice, I wanted it to be something that I feel like would fit more towards Dylan's preferences, not Poseidon's preferences. So I decided, instead of the trident, Dylan was going to have the bow and arrow, which is pretty good for long range. Obviously, we're all familiar with the bow and arrow. It's been in a lot of like fantasy stuff and all other stuff. You know, nobody hasn't heard of the bow and arrow. It's pretty self-explanatory. But it's the kind of weapon where when I look at it, I'm like, that is probably the kind of thing that he would use. That's probably right up his alley, you know? So I just thought it would be a little more interesting than just giving them the weapons that they had when they were gods, you know? So, and I also wanted this to kind of tie into my idea where they are given the weapons of like the trident and the bident and the scepter and all of that, and they see this stuff and they're like, can we change this? I'm not really vibing with this. I'm not really digging it. So, and they're able to, since, you know, it's their weapons. It can be whatever they want it to be, you know? So, yeah. I want to add another fun fact about Dylan. I made him actually a college dropout, and I'd like to think that before everything goes down, he's just kind of pretty much working in like some kind of dead-end retail job because he wants to find his true calling but doesn't really know where to start. But he knows for sure that he should not have started at college. That college was definitely not the direction he should have been going in, you know? So I think towards the end, though, his true calling will end up being traveling. So yeah, kind of put those ocean powers to good use to be able to travel around the world. Maybe do some sightseeing, you know, once everything is over. So yeah, Dylan has also been kept pretty much the same personality-wise. He is pretty much like the chiller, like, hey, go with the flow kind of guy, and also a little bit of a comedy relief, but also secretly a huge nerd. Like, definitely secretly watches like the nerdiest stuff online, but then when like you go into his room, he quickly switches it to something else to look like he's like, oh, you know. But I like to imagine him as like kind of like a nerdy jock, you know what I mean? Something you don't really see every day, you know? So yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I do really like his design, and I totally botched the scar on the drawing of him on the left side. Totally put it on the wrong limbs. It's supposed to be on the left arm and right leg, but since it's technically mirrored, his left would be my right. So I switched that in post. It's gonna be fine on the final drawing, but the speed paint is totally messed up. So that's my bad. That's a fault on me. So yeah, other than that, I think that's pretty much it. I'll let the rest of the speed paint. Oh, there it goes. There's the speed paint. Alright then, so let's move on to Cyprus. So Cyprus. Well, he's the reincarnation of Hades, obviously, since he is the oldest of the group. And I also decided, I don't know why I didn't think of this while I was drawing them the first time, like 10 months ago. I finally added glasses to him. I don't know what it is about Hades. I honestly don't know what it is. But it's just like he kind of gives off major glasses wearing vibes. It might be because I've just seen so many depictions and like people drawing him with glasses where I'm like, oh yeah, duh, glasses. So, but no need to fear. I have added glasses to Cyprus. We are all good. I also decided that he was probably going to be dressed the most fancy out of all of them. It's not like super duper like, oh, formal party or wedding or whatever, but it's still kind of like, average like male in the 1940s, I guess. That's pretty much the inspiration. So yeah, his right eye is partially like a little bit cloudy, kind of like how an eye gets when like a person is getting older and they start to go blind, or like if somebody gets like a really bad eye injury and their eye gets like all cloudy and all of that. Cyprus actually has a scar on his like the right side of his face, which pretty much partially like blinded him. Not super bad, but it would be kind of a disadvantage to him during a battle, since he doesn't have like the best like he can't really see that well anymore. And then add the glasses on top of it. It's a recipe for disaster, With his weapon of choice, instead of the bident, I made it a sword called a kopis, which, if I remember correctly, is a kind of sword that was used by Greek soldiers, but I can't remember right now. But it's a kind of sword, kind of like a scimitar, where it has a curving blade, which is very useful for chopping and slashing things. We got our melee guy there, so we always need a melee guy in an adventure group, So yeah, and then his color palette, at the beginning I made it red, brown, and gray. Since, nothing too crazy or anything, but I think he does definitely have the duller color palette out of the three brothers. And then towards the end, I made his color palettes green, pretty much sort of a connection to Persephone / Irit, but also a connection to the color of how I imagine fire in the underworld and all of that. Red, black, gold to represent the fact that he's the god of wealth, and then pink to pretty much tie him back to Irit, aka Persephone. So that's pretty much it, I think. I also, for his glasses, I didn't want to make the lenses just like a white or anything, so I made it like a light red, just for fun, just to make it a little bit more interesting, I guess. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I actually really like how he came out. One more thing, I decided that I wanted to make him a skeptic. Like, he doesn't really believe in the supernatural, which will be really funny to just see him, like, kind of sort of freak out about everything that's going on around him. Because, like, this is not normal, this isn't supposed to be happening, and all of that. And other than that, that is pretty much it, my little daffodils. I plan on doing a small sketch that may or may not be inspired by K-pop demon hunters. Yes, I did just watch that movie about a week ago, and yes, I am a little bit obsessed with it. But that's besides the point. My next video will be designing Tara Azad, Irit Jansen, and Orin, aka the reincarnations of Hera, Persephone, and... well, Orin's a little bit of a special case. His story needs a little bit more explaining.